I'm Mike Kalichman, Director of the UCSD Research Ethics Program. By most people's definitions, that would mean something that is a matter of personal view. So for somebody who morally views the human embryo as equivalent to human life, it would of course not be morally justified to use the human embryo for any purpose other than for production of human life. If someone views the human embryo as human cells that are not necessarily equivalent to human life, only that they could become a human life, then for them it would be morally justifiable to be able to use those cells in the same way you could use any other cell. The questions you raised are religious questions, and for many people it is a religious debate, and that's certainly the debate that's most publicly known. So if you define from a religious perspective the embryo as morally equivalent to a human, you believe it has a soul at that point, then it becomes a religious question, because someone of a different religious faith or someone of a different perspective does not agree with that view. So that's one reason for the debate, but there are two other issues. One is some people are opposed to the use of the human embryo not on religious grounds, but on sometimes scientific or philosophical grounds. For example, some people might argue, and some people do argue, that the human embryo isn't equivalent to a human life, but if we decide to use the human embryo, we may be engaging in a slippery slope, where if we use the human embryo at 3 days, we can use it at 5 days. We can use it at 5 days, we can use it at 2 weeks. If we can use it at 2 weeks, we can use it when it's in utero. And where does the line get drawn? Where does the line get drawn on what's an acceptable use of a human embryo? So with those problems, the slippery slope argument says we shouldn't even engage in beginning to use the human embryo because of the worry. That was a second concern. And then the final concern is that there are a lot of other ethical questions that go with the use of the human embryo. We need to be responsible in our use of any human tissue, and some of the kinds of experiments that can be done could raise issues that don't have to do with religious concerns, but might have to do with social or political concerns for our society. Several of my colleagues have argued that slippery slope arguments have some value because they tell us where we should be careful, but our job is to make sure we get firm footing so we don't fall down the slippery slope. So in the case of human embryonic stem cells, that's the purpose of very careful and thoughtful review of which experiments will be done and which won't, and what the arguments are for doing them. This is not something that's black and white, but something that we're all learning as we go along. People tend to speak out against things that they can make a personal connection to, and favor things that they can make a personal connection to. In a fertility clinic, people have the focus on the desire of individuals or couples to have children that they couldn't otherwise have, and that appears to outweigh their concern about the embryos that won't get used. That said, the embryos aren't necessarily going to be destroyed from the clinics, so people can view them as still potential human beings that haven't lost their lives yet. So if you look at that situation and contrast it with the science situation is likely to require injury or destruction of an embryo in order to produce the stem cells. So if you focus only on the embryo, then in the second case you're losing the embryo. In the first case you still have the embryo available. But I should add that another view is that in the second case, although you lose the embryo, the things that you're doing scientifically may help lead to saving or preserving many lives that would not have otherwise been saved or preserved. If someone believed that the human embryo was a human life, then it would not only devalue human sanctity, but it would, for them, it would already be there. This is something they would not accept. If someone doesn't see it as a human life, then it's not devaluing human life. In fact, for those people who are doing this research, they see this as one of the highest callings they can have, to do something that might help address some of the most difficult diseases that we face? And the answer is that we need to engage scientists and the public in open conversations about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we know and what we don't know. And that's actually, in the area of stem cell research, is being done better than probably any other area of research in history. There's been more of a public dialogue about the ethical issues, how research should proceed. As a result of that, there's a pretty intensive process for review of any research to be sure that things that go forward are done in the most ethical way possible. Does that answer both parts of your question?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you
Any
very
other
much.
questions? Okay. Okay.